This story is about Laura, who cautiously engages in online dating and meets Dave on Tinder. Despite feeling a strong connection, she begins to notice red flags during their first date. It turns out Dave was using a fake profile and had a history of stalking and harassment. Laura reports him to Tinder and the police, leading to his arrest. The experience leaves Laura traumatized, highlighting the dangers of online interactions. I've always been the cautious type, especially when it comes to online dating. You hear all those horror stories about people meeting up with strangers and things going terribly wrong. But when I matched with Dave on Tinder, everything just felt different. His profile was the perfect mix of charming and down-to-earth. We chatted for weeks, and it felt like we had this deep connection. He made me laugh, listened to my rants about work, and even remembered little details about my day. So, when he finally suggested we meet in person, I didn't hesitate. I told my friends about him, of course. They were happy for me but kept reminding me to stay safe. Meet in a public place, they said. Make sure you have an exit plan, they warned. I promised them I would, and I really meant to follow all those precautions. But, when the day came, Dave suggested we meet at this cozy little cafe he knew. It wasn't too far from my apartment, and I figured it was public enough. The cafe was a quaint little spot tucked away in a quiet part of town. It had this old-world charm with its mismatched furniture and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I got there a bit early and found a table near the window. As I waited, my excitement turned into nervousness. I kept checking my phone, reading over our old messages to calm myself down. Then he walked in. At first I wasn't sure it was him. He looked different from his pictures. Not in a bad way, just different. He was taller, a bit bulkier, and his hair was a shade darker. But his smile was the same, and that put me at ease. "Hey, you must be Laura," he said, and his voice had that same warmth I remembered from our calls. We started talking, and it felt just like our chats online. He was funny, engaging, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked about everything: work, hobbies, even our favorite movies. I felt myself relaxing, thinking maybe I'd finally found someone special. But then, little things started to seem off. He asked a lot of personal questions, more than you'd expect on a first date. Questions about my family, my schedule, even my living arrangements. I brushed it off as him being curious, but it left a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. After a while, he suggested we leave the cafe and take a walk. I was hesitant at first, but he seemed so sincere. Plus, it was still daylight, and the neighborhood was busy enough. We walked to a nearby park, chatting and laughing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't until he suggested we go back to his place that alarms started ringing in my head. I politely declined, saying I had an early start the next day. His demeanor changed instantly. The warmth in his eyes turned cold, and his smile faded. "Oh, come on, just for a bit," he insisted, grabbing my arm a bit too tightly. I pulled away, my heart racing. "I really should go," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He stared at me for a moment, and I could see the frustration building in his eyes. Then, he suddenly let go and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, maybe next time," he said. I quickly made my way back to the main road, my mind racing. I texted my friends, telling them I was fine but needed to talk. I felt a mix of relief and fear. I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the date in my mind, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. I decided to do a bit of digging. I went back to his Tinder profile and started looking closely at his pictures. Something about them felt staged. I reverse-searched one of his photos, and my heart sank when I found it on a stock image website. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Dave wasn't who he said he was. I felt sick to my stomach. Who had I been talking to all this time? I decided to report his profile to Tinder and block him immediately. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything, and I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling like I was being watched. Then, one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Why did you block me?" it read. My blood ran cold. How did he get my number? I showed the text to my friends, and they insisted I go to the police. At first I thought I was overreacting, but the texts kept coming. They ranged from pleading to angry, each one more unsettling than the last. I finally went to the police, but there wasn't much they could do without more information. One night I was home alone when I heard a noise outside my apartment. It was a soft tapping, like someone was knocking gently on my window. My heart pounded as I crept towards the window and peeked through the blinds. There was no one there, but I could see a shadow moving near the edge of the building. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend, barely able to speak through my fear. She stayed on the line with me until I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The police arrived and did a thorough search, but they didn't find anyone. They told me to stay with a friend for a few days while they investigated. I packed a bag and went to stay with my best friend. That night, as we sat in her living room, I got another text. "You can't hide from me," it read. I felt a chill run down my spine. How did he know where I was? We decided to set up a trap. With the help of the police, we arranged for me to go back to my apartment, but this time they would be watching. I was terrified, but I knew it was the only way to catch him. I went back home, trying to act normal, but every little noise made me jump. It wasn't long before I got another text. "I see you," it said. My hands were shaking as I texted my friends, letting them know. The police were ready, waiting nearby. I heard the knock again, and this time, I stayed calm. I went to the window and saw the same shadow. The police moved in quickly, and I heard a struggle outside. Moments later, they had him in custody. It turns out Dave, or whatever his real name was, had been using fake profiles to lure women for months. He had a history of stalking and harassment, and I was just his latest target. The police assured me he would be facing serious charges, but it didn't make the fear go away. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep, and I jumped at every little noise. My friends were a constant support, but the experience left a scar. I deleted all my dating apps and changed my number, hoping to put the whole ordeal behind me. Even now, I'm still wary of meeting new people. I can't help but think about how easily I was fooled, how close I came to real danger. It's a reminder that sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed. They're hiding behind a charming smile and a perfect profile picture. And that's my story. It's not a ghost story or a tale of haunted houses, but it's my own personal nightmare. Be careful out there, and always trust your instincts. You never know who might be hiding behind that screen. This story is about a man who, after a significant breakup, reluctantly agrees to a casual date with a woman he met on Tinder. The date starts awkwardly, with the woman being shy and nervous, but it takes a bizarre turn when she aggressively kisses him in a park and becomes overly persistent. The situation escalates with her bombarding him with texts and calls, forcing him to block her number. So, I had just gotten out of a pretty significant relationship with someone of 6 years, nearly engaged and moving in together, etc., when things fell apart. I took a good amount of time to be on my own to get my stuff together again when my friends began encouraging me to get back out there. Needless to say, I wasn't wanting anything at this point, nor was I looking for anything, but they insisted that I at least go on a few casual dates for practice, maybe just to get my skills back up for when I was ready. I think they were honestly just worried because I became quite hermetic. So, I matched with this girl who's from Seattle for the summer. She's a little out of the way from me but was eager to meet, seemed really friendly, and was really interested. She was even willing to come to my area, etc. I really wasn't at all interested, to be truthful, but my friends again encouraged this, practice, whatever that means. A date doesn't mean commitment, whatever. I want to be very clear, though, that I was extremely honest and explicit with her, that I was not looking for anything serious, or anything really at all. I was very forthcoming that I had just gotten out of something serious, and I was just kind of encouraged to explore. She persisted and still wanted to meet, so we agreed to a casual lunch in a sports bar that week. I got there, and she was already waiting for me. I was a bit put off by how different she looked than in her photos. Not trying to sound shallow or anything, but her pictures from Tinder were easily at least 7 years old, which I verified based on a tattoo she had in person versus the one she had in her pictures. So, I was a bit thrown off by that. I wasn't the least bit attracted to her, but I was there just having new experiences anyway, right? So no big deal. I felt so bad because the entire time she seemed so incredibly shy and awkward. I even noticed her hand shaking when she reached for her glass, which I found endearing, honestly. So, I did my best to get her talking and try to help her feel more relaxed. I asked her questions and shared about things I figured you'd do on dates, where she grew up, music she's into, school, etc., all to which I literally received one-word answers. It went on like this for about an hour, and she was just not working with me at all. But I had tried to keep room in my heart because it was clear she was feeling anxious, and I understand that on a personal level. She then pulled out this book and said, "I got this for you," and I responded very gratefully, thanking her and asking her about it because, hey, if someone wants to share a good read with me, I'm all for that. She looked at me funny and said in a very sudden but odd tone, "You're kidding me, right?" I was very confused and just looked at her like, "What?" And she said, "This is your favorite book. You told me this was your favorite book," to which I said, "No, I've never heard of this before." So we concluded that she ultimately got me confused with someone else she must have been chatting with, which I honestly found hilarious. She was embarrassed, but I made light of it and found it funny because I get it. That's Tinder culture, I guess. So, as we finished lunch, I'm still receiving one-word answers despite the funny moment. I kind of became a bit suggestive that we should conclude our date by saying I have to get back to feed my animals and do some laundry, etc. But she became very adamant about spending more time and asked if we could do something else. I was genuinely trying to be a decent person, so I agreed, and we found a nearby park to walk. That's where things got weird. We sat on a bench. Mind you, it's broad daylight. There are kids playing basketball nearby, folks jogging past. I'm still trying to make conversation yet again, but still getting one-word answers. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, without any warning whatsoever, she proceeded to just kiss me very aggressively, tongue and everything. I was honestly so shocked I stood there frozen, not knowing what the hell to do. I had this timid, shy woman who's really not made much conversation with me at all, who was so nervous she was visibly shaken, just turned into a freaking bear mauling my face in like 6 seconds. My head was spinning with confusion and anxiety, and I swear it felt like it lasted forever, and I just prayed for it to stop. I was so put off and honestly a bit afraid to do or say anything, like what to even do in this situation. I was just hoping she'd pick up on my very obvious body language that I wasn't reciprocating anything at all. I was completely unprepared for a situation like this. Then some really nasty guy walks by, starts catcalling, and literally begins setting us up into a three-way, and I'm just like, what the hell's going on? I need to get out of here. I was 1,000 different types of uncomfortable. I ended up managing to ward him off after telling him very politely no more than several times. All the while she's just laughing, and I'm thinking, who even are you? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde over here, what the hell? So he leaves, and I'm insisting now that I have to leave and go home. She seems to ignore what I'm saying and gets very close to my face again and says, "Did you like that? Do you think I'm sexy? Do you want me?" I was so goddamn nervous I was like, I really need to get home. And she said, "Can I come?" And I told her firmly, no. She literally tried to persuade me to let her come back to my place with me, and I had to say no more than 3 times. So finally, I'm home, and frankly just kind of shaken up. I hadn't really done the dating thing in quite a long time, but that felt very abnormal. She texted me after she got home and asked if I'd like to go on a second date with her, and I was very kind despite being made incredibly uncomfortable, and I told her that she was a very cool chick and I had a nice time, but I didn't feel anything there. I reminded her I wasn't looking for anything. She then text-bombed me a bunch of crazy stuff, saying how she didn't understand and was so confused, that she thought I was so into her, and that things were going great. I did not respond to any of these because now she's continuing to cross my boundaries. I said what I needed to say, and I thought I was being decent by at least being honest. So, the texts continued, and I figured they were eventually going to stop because it was a first date. How can someone be so upset over someone not reciprocating on the first date? They did not stop. By the texts, you would have thought she ended a 2-year relationship. Then she began calling. At that point, I had to block her number. So, nightmare Tinder girl, please, for the love of everything, let's never ever meet again.